For most people who take the opportunity to ride the railway built of gold, they come in the summer when the historic White Pass in Yukon makes its daily run to the summit of the White Pass. This 3-hour round-trip excursion offers spectacular views of the Skagway River drainage, cascading waterfalls, midsummer snowfields, the old cantilever bridge, and scenery that captures the mind of all those who experience this unique narrow-gauge railway. What probably many of the visitors who ride the White Pass are not aware of is what is involved in bringing this historic railway online spring after spring. Skagway, Alaska. This is where gold seekers disembark their ships to seek their fortune in the gold fields of the Yukon. Many of the original buildings from the gold rush have been restored to their original look from 100 years ago. Among the newest of the buildings in Skagway are the shops of the White Pass and Yukon Railway. It is here where the diesel and steam locomotives are serviced, passenger cars restored, and where the steam rotary number 1 was restored and put back into service. Old number 1, as it is called, sat on display in the Skagway yard for years after being brought down from Lake Bennett. During the winter of 1995 and 1996, the rotary was restored to operating condition. It was even used to plow the pass in the spring of 1996, but needed further restoration, which was carried out in the winter of 1996 and 1997.
This thing was built in 1898 in a place called Patterson, New Jersey by Cook Locomotive Works. And White Pass took delivery of it in 1899. This one's sister machine is in Breckenridge, Colorado on display. It was called Rotary Number 2. What really precipitated this being restored to service was in fact the history. And we kicked it around in 1996, and basically because Tom King, who was the president of the company, liked the idea of having this return to service. And so we actually started full bore with the restoration in 1996.
lot prettier than it was when we was using it back in its heyday. They got it all painted up pretty. Looks good. When years ago, they had wooden cabs on them. They shake and rattle and leak, and well, it was actually unsafe. They finally built steel cabs on them.
A dusting of fresh snow begins the plowing day for the Rotary crew in Skagway.
Got her lit off, Dave.
As preparations were underway, an oil line blew near the firebox, catching the underside of the Rotary on fire. Quick action by the crew averted disaster. Now it is off to the White Pass.
It's unbelievable, you know, how extinct this stuff is getting. And, you know, like steam equipment is getting tougher and tougher to come by. It's important for me and a lot of people here that the history be retained. And it was nice to see, instead of us moving into the modern age, so to speak, we're doing a little bit of that, but we're also moving into the past. And I think they're so linked together that you can't forget each other. I mean, it's important to know where we came from, what our history was, and I think that Rotary, because it goes all the way back to nearly 100 years ago, just kind of keeps a bridge there for old memories, old pictures, old stories so many stories I've heard that I've never heard before in the last 2 years, brought back by, gosh, I remember when you'd be just sitting at coffee talking to somebody who worked here for so many years and who's been retired for, say, 20 years, and they'll start to share stories of what they went through. And so it is neat. It kind of revives the past.
Weather conditions at the White Pass greeted the Rotary crew with whiteout conditions and snow falling. The
guys in the diesels, they basically go by what the whistle signals they're getting from the rotary fleet. And I'll have a conductor on the diesel engines and an engineer. And the conductor a lot of times will get on the back unit and actually operate the flangers for when the diesel has to back up. A lot of times what will happen is if the cuts are deep, when the rotary goes by, snow will fall in alongside of it. And so then you get to a point where you're pushing a lot of snow. So then they'll just back up to get the snow out from underneath the engines and then push forward again.
With the deep snow, there comes a halt of the operations. Superintendent John Bush explains why.
Well, when the snow gets higher than the hood of the rotary, it's hard for the rotary to deal with it. So we're trying to see if we can figure out a way to knock it down so it's no taller than the hood of the rotary. Then we'll be all right again.
Backing up the rotary allows the Caterpillar tractors to move in.
With steam pushers required such huge crews, as many as 10 people, to run this. And so they went to cats because obviously one cat's gonna one cat. And so they could put a couple of cats up there and would basically clear the entire railroad, or where they needed to be cleared, with just a couple of cats.
It seems like an endless cycle of pushing forward and backing up to clear the rotary blades of the heavy, wet snow. The farther they move along, the deeper the snow becomes on their way to the Canadian shed. As luck would have it, a critical part breaks on the rotary. It falls off and is lost in the deep snow. At the Canadian and American border, this gives the crew the opportunity to replenish the water supply in the rotary's tender, while the search continues for the missing part. Critical missing part cannot be located, so the rotary is pushed up the track to pick up the remaining crew members and begins its 20-mile return to Skagway. In Skagway, one of the track maintenance speeders returns with part of the rotary crew. There has been a rock slide blocking the rotary and the support train's return. Engine number 114 is ready to bring an excavator to remove the track blockage. winter, the trains can return to Skagway. A new plowing day begins with the rotary being repaired overnight. Just past the summit of the pass in the narrow cut called the Canadian Shed, the second locomotive pushing the rotary derails, forcing a halt of plowing operations. There is only a few hundred feet left to completely clear the Canadian Shed, so the Caterpillar tractors must clear the line and push the snow into the rotary. This allows one locomotive engine to push the rotary clear, allowing another engine to pull the derailed locomotive clear of the Canadian Shed. Having freed the derailed locomotive, the remaining two locomotives couple up to the rotary, returning it to the pass. Filling the water tender, it returns to finish the day's plowing, passing the locomotive which has been re-railed and placed on a siding.
This has been an experience. It's been a real learning experience, and I'm really glad we've done it in the sense that all of us that are here now can get a feel for what them guys did years ago. And when you would hear guys, retired guys now say, I wouldn't touch that in 100 years. After going out, being a part of it, and seeing this thing, I could see where you could get tired of doing this. You know, like going out once a year is a thrill a minute, but going out every day all winter long might be a whole different story.